Good morning, everyone. Let us start the session by inviting our Honorable Director, Dr. P.A. Habib Rahman, respected Chief Guest, Mr. Thomas Joss Jr., Advocate A.A. Abul Hassan, Secretary, MES AIMAT,
Hello.
Professor Sharija Aziz.
Okay, let's start.
Good morning, everyone. Let's start the session by inviting our Honorable Director, Dr. P.A. Habib Rahman, respected Chief Guest, Mr. Thomas Joss Jr., Advocate A.A. Abul Hassan, Secretary, MES AIMAT, Professor Sharija Aziz, Head of Department MCA, Dr. Muhammad Sajjad, Head of Department MBA, and other faculty members and beloved AIMATians. I'm Shilpa Biju, really glad to welcome all the students to the third day of Tech Talk series of 20th MCA batch on what is data and how do we handle data by Mr. Thomas Joss Jr. Data, a word we computer application students hear almost on every subject we work on. So what exactly is data? How is it collected and used? How do we handle them? Why is so important? Too many questions related to a single term. So I think today's tech talk will be so useful for each of you who are going to select IT field as your profession.
Let's
Now,
need a, yeah.
I'm very glad to take an opportunity to introduce our backbone, the pillar of our institution, Dr. P.A. Habib Rahman, Director of MES AIMAT, to deliver the welcome address. Sir, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm extremely glad to be here to welcome one and all who have assembled here for today's program. And we have a wonderful resource person and all the more important, a wonderful subject. So we were thinking in time immemorial that the person holding the largest quantity of land is the richest person. With the Industrial Revolution 1, 2, and 3, that has been transformed or changed to those who own bigger factories. And now with the Industrial Revolution 4.0, all those things have changed. And now the biggest asset any organization hold as on date is the data, nothing else. It's not land holding, it's not factories. The data has become such a resource, the biggest asset the world over people are looking for. And now we are talking about the data warehousing. And our resource person is a manager working in US. So normally, what do we keep in a warehouse normally? Other assets. But data has become very precious. And it is capable of taking the organization to greater heights. Data management, big data analytics with artificial intelligence and all such things takes the direction or sets the direction for the world as a whole itself. In this perspective, the topic which we have selected, that is data warehousing, what is data and how do we use data, has become all the more relevant and important as on date. I'm not taking much time because everybody is eagerly awaiting to listen to our chief guest. So Thomas Joss Jr. is the chief guest of the day. He is working as a data warehouse manager at Athene in Lowa in United States. I'm not talking much about him because he will be separately introduced. So I, on behalf of entire MES AIMAT family, its management, and all the students, faculty, and guests assembled here, welcome you, sir, for today's webinar.
Thank you.
Our secretary, Advocate A.A. Abul Hassan, is the man and mind behind MES IMAT. Whatever development that you are seeing, be it in terms of the 100% admission for both for MBA and near 100% for MCA, or the new infrastructure which we are say making it uh, for the students who join here, is the person who is taking a very keen interest in everything what we do. From minutest aspect, he is seeing what is this. Today also, he has asked me what is this data and what exactly is the use and how it is being used, how it is useful for the students, and all such things he has inquired. I, on behalf of MES IMAT family, entire faculty colleagues, and all those assembled here, welcome you, sir, for today's program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our MCA HOD, Professor Sharija Aziz, MBA HOD, Dr. Muhammad Sajad, they have taken very keen interest in making this program possible. I welcome both of you for today's program. A special mention has to be made in respect of today's program. One person, that is none other than Akbar Shah, who has been instrumental in bringing this resource person. I specially thank Akbar Shah also for bringing such a wonderful person for today's program. I welcome all my faculty colleagues who are very keenly attending this program in a large numbers, almost 100%. The several invited guests are participating in this one. I welcome both the faculty colleagues as well as the invited guests who have attending this program, accepting our invitation. And the most important segment of today's program, the students of MCA 2020 batch, the 20th batch of MCA. They are attending in Toto, as also their parents are also attending. I welcome all the students as also the parents for today's program. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your simple and humble words. Now, I request Advocate Abul Hassan, Secretary, MES AIMAT, is the one of the important persons who always supports and encourages the students and faculty with his extreme presence. I welcome you, sir, to have an inaugural address. Sir, please.
Good morning to you all. Respected Director of MES AIMAT, today's resource person, most respected Thomas Jones Jr., Dr. Sajad, and Professor Sharija, head of the departments, other faculties and students. I am very glad to be part of this today's program, and I feel honored that I am invited to inaugurate this function. The data to me is a new thing. I have been in computer also, in our mobile phone or cell phone also, everywhere it is data. What is data? I am trying to understand what it is. Whichever industry you work in or whatever you interest, you will almost certainly have come across a story about how data is changing the face of our world. It might be part of study helping to cure a disease, boost a company's revenue, make a building more efficient, or creating targeted advertisements you keep seeing. In general, data is simply another word for information. But here I feel data is sometimes contradictory and conflicting. You see that the agitation going on in the suburbs of Delhi. All roads are blocked. All roads to Delhi was once the slogan. Now all the roads to Delhi are blocked. That is the slogan. What is happening? The data on an enactment made by the parliament is given by the farmers is different from what is given by the government of India. So there can be data which may be conflicting. That is perhaps like what we argue on the courts. On the same enactment, on the same provision, we advocates on both sides argue differently, or just contradictory arguments are advanced. That is our game, that is our win. So I am very happy to inaugurate this session on the topic what is data and how do we handle data. I am once again I thank Mr. Jose Thomas Jr. To accept our invitation. I am honored by your we are honored by your presence, sir. Thank you very much. I declare this meeting inaugurated. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your loving words, and we will ever remain grateful to you. Now, it's my privilege to welcome our guest, Mr. Thomas George Jr. He is currently working as a data warehouse manager with Athene in Lowa, USA. He moved to US in 2011 and has since been working with many US-based companies in implementing IT solutions. Key places of work in a US include Pfizer, Capital One, Walgreens, State of Michigan, Anthem, etc. It's our honor to have such a professional with us. The space is all yours, sir. Sir, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for all the nice words. Uh, can somebody let me know if you can hear me okay?
Sir, it's
Can
audible.
Yeah, okay. And I will try to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see my screen as well.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Visible? Okay, thank you. So thanks for that nice introduction, and thanks for all the honorable members of the college who said those nice words. It is extremely, I find it very very humbling to listen to such a nice gesture or listen to such good words on behalf of me being here. Thank you so much. Batch of MCA 2020, welcome. I think you made a very good choice for your career. So I wish you all the best in the years to come. I definitely think technology is the way to go, and being an MCA graduate would definitely show you the path for a great career ahead, right? So I think we can get started. Am I audible again? Can somebody say yes or no?
Yes, sir, it's
Yes,
clear.
sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
audible.
Yeah, thank you. So like everybody said, today we will discuss about data, all right? So we have quite many things that we will go over. And I understand the audience that we have in here. Most of you might have completed your BCA and you are entering into your masters, right? So certain aspect of things which we discussed today might not be new to you, but I think it might be of a little insight to those people who are new to the world of computer science, right? Somebody who might be coming in from a different route, right? So I will try to make sense of whatever that I'm trying to say. This is what I wanted to talk about, or what we wanted to discuss about. So we will talk about what is data, right? The general meaning of what data is, then some basics of data, right? How does computer take in data, does what with it, right? Then who uses data, right? Then how do people access data? How do people get those data, right? Then like your director and others mentioned, like why is there so much of emphasis on data, right? We will just think about one use case, one or two use cases or business cases where we will discuss on why there is so much of emphasis on data. Now, how is data stored in an organization, right? Then what are the types of data? Some call it as structured data. We hear a lot about big data, data lake, making intelligence out of data. So let's quickly understand what is structured data, what is unstructured data. Then I'll quickly bring your attention to two types of processing systems. It is OLTP and OLAP, right? You might want to understand what those are. Then lastly, we will talk about data warehouse and how do we manage them, right? So a lot of things to cover, but I think we will try to understand things at a very high level. And then maybe that's a good starting point for you guys, right? When you walk into your MCA program over the next 1 or 2 years, you will definitely learn more about this, right? So let's get started, right? So now what is data? Data is nothing but, what in the purest form, right? If somebody asks you like what is data, so the whole point is it's something which can be stored inside a computer, right? Like it's any level of information which can be transmitted from which is transferable and is transmissible from one computer to another, right? So it came in from a Latin word called datum, right? So that's the literal meaning of what data is, right? Anything which is stored inside a computer, right? So that is when we say about anything which is stored within a computer, we can call it as a digital data, right? So data can be physical and digital, right? Any document in a file or in a paper, that's also a data, but that's physical data. So it's not associated with with a computer or anything which is in like digital. So whatever that we're talking about today, it's digital data. So data in itself is physical data and digital data, right? Now, data is not necessarily alphabets and numbers, right? It can be images, it can be audio clips, text, anything and everything is data. So when this data or information, it's stored in computer, it's stored electronically, we call it as digital data. Okay? So that's what data is, right? Now, how do organizations get data, right? Or what is the basic flow of data, right? So data definitely comes in from human beings, right? Like, so some people, like somebody, so if you take an example of some person who is sitting in front of who is a receptionist of a hotel, right? So when you walk into the hotel to check in, then they might ask you, what's your name, what's your address, what's your license, give me your license number, right? So they key in all this information into a computer, right? So that's the entry point of data, right? Or if you have a reservation in a hotel, somebody might ask you like, hey, do you have a reservation? Okay, can you give me a name? Let me try to look you up, right? So it is people who essentially enter information or enter data, and this information, when the operator keys in, it gets saved inside the computer, right? So within the computer, there are the data is stored inside the computer, right? So it might be stored in different formats, right? Inside the computer, there might be a small database which is created, right? Database might be a new word for a few of you, but that is one way of storing data inside a computer, right? Or it can be simply in a file, right? You might be open an Excel file or a PowerPoint or a notepad. So essentially, you will save data inside a computer, right? So essentially, I'm just trying to understand. I'm just trying to tell you, like, how is data entering into the world of an enterprise, right? Now, how does the data look like, right? For us, when we enter the data, or when a receptionist enter the data, it is in a very human readable form, right? So you might be able to read first name as Thomas, last name as Junior. So it is very readable, right? But from a computer's perspective, most of you might know, computer, it converts the data from a human readable form into a machine language, right? Into a machine readable form. And basically computer, when it tries to store the data, or when it tries to understand the data, it stores in a binary format, which consists of 0 and 1, right? And any information that you try to save inside the computer, whether it be a software, a music, or a document, anything and everything, it's all stored in the machine language, which is nothing but binary, right? So this slide again, I am just trying to tell you that what data in many forms, it can be digitally saved, right? It can be audio images, it can be movie images, characters, anything and everything. All this level of data is stored within the computer in the binary format. Now, when data is digital, right? So what happens, right? Why is that in the first place we went digital, right? We had all of the use cases on why and how is technology making our lives better, right? But from a data perspective, you might know we were previously storing all the information in files and folders, right? I mean physical files and folders, right? Or in notebooks. So when data is stored electronically, right, the processing becomes faster. When you want to retrieve information, it is much more faster. The data can be transferred from one system to another very easily, right? At the end of the day, data is very secure, right? Data, it doesn't deteriorate over time, right? So paper documents, they after some time it falls off, it gets torn out. But in the world of digital data and digital storage, nothing happens to this data. They don't lose their quality even when we use it multiple times. So it's the most secured form of preserving information, the digital way of storing or keeping data, right? So that is just one reason why we keep data in the digital format, right? So this is a picture where whatever that we discussed so far, it's the same information but in a pictorial format, right? So we have audio clips, mouse, keyboard, all this information, it gets into the microprocessor, right? It gets stored in zeros and ones, right? And when somebody wants this information, we can either print it out or you can retrieve it into a computer again, right? So this is a pictorial representation of how data is being stored and how data is being consumed. This is a very high level overview, okay? Now, the big question is, right, why is data having an increased emphasis these days, right? Am I still audible? Am I going at a good pace? Am I speaking so fast?
Yes, it's clear.
Yes, yes, audible. It's good.
Okay,
It's good.
okay,
It's
thank
good.
you. Thanks, Edward. So now, why is there an increased emphasis on data, right? Or why, as MCA freshers, when you walk in, you need to understand why is data so relevant, right? So to begin with, the world is an increasingly competitive place, right? Customers have multiple choices. So let's take this example, right? You want to buy a car, right? You have options. You can buy a Honda car, you have a Toyota car, you have a Mahindra car. I mean, anything and everything is around. So customers have their choices, right? 10 or 15 or 20 years back, that was not the case, right? We need to figure out, okay, what is the nearest place where I can get a car. So you did not have so many options there, right? And if as an enterprise, if I'm not able to take care of my customer, he definitely can have many other options at his will, right? So say for example, right, in a very competitive world, let's say our telephone plans, right? So I mean, I know in India we have huge giant players in the world of telecom, but at least a few years back, we had Airtel, we had Hutch, and then we had BSNL and many others, right? So it is very necessary for any telecom provider to keep their customers happy. If not, with the number portability now in play, you can easily switch to another customer. So it is very important to understand, to know your customer, right? So all this data which companies keep with themselves, they need to understand, like, how is their customer doing? Are they satisfied with what are the service that they provide? So because the switching cost is very minimal. When I say switching cost is for you to move from one service provider to another service provider. When I say service provider, it is nothing but one telecom company to another telecom company. If I am unhappy with it, it is very, very easy, right? So that switching cost is very minimal. So business, or when I are enterprise, they need to have increased insights into what does Thomas feel about our service, right? For example, right? How do I feel about the telecom service I do? Am I happy? Am I making plans? Am I making calls to the customer service saying that, what, the service is not good? What are the issues that I face, right? So this is very important for companies to keep a focus on, right? And then know your customer, follow up with your customer, right? After a few years, like if I buy a car from Maruti, right? The marketing team decides to send flyers about the new model of Maruti car, right, to their existing customers. But if I am a person who bought a car yesterday, there is no point in getting a marketing flyer to my house today, because I just bought a car yesterday. And if I'm getting a flyer today saying that, okay, there is a new car in the showroom, no, that doesn't make sense, right? So more than helping a customer, you are literally irritating a customer, right? So all this, right? Maybe it's too much of information for you to grasp right off the bat. But what I am saying is, It is very important to understand customer, like, what you might have heard about this, say, your customer is the king. It is very important to understand who the customer is, right? And what is he looking for? Know your customer. That is very, very critical. And I will also give you another example where in United States, you have lot of farmlands. Okay, so I will give you an interesting case study, right? So everything is machine operated in United States as far as farming is concerned. So suppose if they had 1 acre of land and they decided to plant a tree, right? They, based on the data, like, for, let's say, for example, they are planning to put up cash, like a coffee plantation, right? So one acre of coffee plantations. So they will see, like, in this 1 acre of land, which part of the land gives me the highest yield. Okay, so what that means, and they have the same breed of plant, right? So you cannot you cannot differentiate much on the quality of crop or quality of the seed. So when they gave the seed, when they planted the seeds, or when they planted the same grade of plants in that 1 acre of land, after a year, when they tried to take coffee out of those plants, they saw that, one side does not have much of the yield, like us compared to others, right? So they studied, like, why is it, right? Then they understood that, okay, we need more water in that area because they have less sunlight of area. So they need to add more fertilizers in there, right? So what I'm saying is, this is another use case on how data is going to help in farming, right? So no matter what, in every other sector that you handle or that you move around, there is a case where the data is playing a key role, right? Even if you go to a hospital, they will know, like, how many patients who got admitted with this disease, what is their rate of change in their pattern of vitals. Vitals, when I say vitals, it is the temperature, BP, and everything, right? So data is being monitored in a very, very aggressive manner. So I think I gave you an emphasis on why is data very important, right? So when it comes to life-changing decisions or saving lives, or in fact, in any necessities of your day-to-day activities, data is going to play a very, very key role. And more than that, as software engineers, right? When you come out of your MCA program, right? You might end up writing so many programs, right? Or you might end up learning so many languages. But essentially, if you look at it, what is the purpose of any application or any program that you build, right? There should be an input and there should be an output, right? The input that you feed into a program is nothing but some information or some data, right? And output is some kind of processed data, right? So at the end of the day, if there is no meaningful output to your program, then that program itself is useful, right? So it is very important for us to understand what is the data that is being processed and what is the desirable output. Your program whatever that you have developed might be able to do a lot of things, but if there is no desired output out there, then the whole program itself is not going to help us, right? So it is very important for us to understand what is the incoming data and what should be the outgoing data, right? Now, I will talk about different types of data in an organization, right? So forget, and at least for a few minutes, and let's forget about whatever that we discussed, right? Now let's with a fresh mind, if you look at an organization, right? What are the different types of data that the organization will have, right? So consider, let's again take the example of a car company, right? So Thomas, I'm going into a Toyota showroom, right? So definitely when I enter the showroom, the company will ask for my personal details, right? So personal data definitely is something, is some kind of data which every companies will have, right? So the personal data includes my name, my address, my driver's license, my phone number, email address, etc. So all those are my personal data, right? Now, there's a second type of data which the companies will have, right? And that is this engagement data. That's how we call it as, right? So now, suppose that I bought a Toyota Corolla or whatever, right? I bought a car. So I went home and then I have a problem with my car, right? And I am asking, so what do? I call Toyota showroom, right? So that's a call to the call center, right? So that is engagement data. So the companies will have this information. Okay, Thomas had called me yesterday at that particular point in time, right? Or there is another option where I can email the Toyota showroom, right? So information, or maybe I go to internet and I find the website, and from the website I find them, right? Or maybe there is a social media page. In the Facebook, I have Toyota showroom of Ernakulam, right? So any information which is going in from all this social media, I mean, or call center. So this is all engagement data. How Thomas Jones Jr. is interacting with Toyota. So that is engagement data. So that is one level of data which a company keeps. Then third is the behavioral data, right? So the behavioral data is like, what, if I owe money to this company, Toyota, like I make my payments, right? So any payment, these are all transactions, right? So this transaction data, so Thomas made a payment of 50,000 on this particular day. So that is transactional data. So those are grouped as behavioral data or the usage information data, right? Now, at last, when there is also attitudinal data, this is nothing but, the reviews that I post about Toyota somewhere, right? Or if a customer care executive is calling me after a few days saying that, hey, sir, how do you feel about your Toyota car? I say, good, bad. Okay, when did I buy the car? Like all this, or do I plan to buy another car, right? So this is all the sentiments, the customer sentiments we say, right? So that is the attitudinal data, right? So these are all different types of data which an organization keeps, right? So if somebody asks you, like, what kind of data does State Bank of India have about a person, right? It's not just your name and address, right? They will have your engagement data, right? Like, how do you interact with State Bank of India? What are your within your bank account? Like, how do you transfer money, get money, and all that online banking data? That's your behavioral data. And then you also have your attitudinal data, right? So these are all different types of data which any organizations will keep, right? Now, organizations, they will analyze these data, right? So they will see this engagement data, or they will see this behavioral data, and say, like, what, where is Thomas doing? How far off is he with his payment on the car, right? So if I took a car loan, or if I took a car like 5 years back or 8 years back, maybe it's time for Thomas to consider buying another car. Okay, now that's the right time for my marketing team to send in a flyer to his house saying that, hey, Thomas, we have a new offer for Toyota. There's a car here. Do you want to consider buying a new car, right? So that's exactly the case where, what your director was making the statement, right? So data is the biggest asset, right? So then the Toyota showroom has the information of Thomas, right? And they know that, what, Thomas had a car with Toyota, and his car is into 8 or 9 years, right? And this is the time when somebody is trying to buy a new car, or maybe thinking of a new car. Or maybe I might not have even thought about buying a new car, but seeing this flyer, that hits me an idea. Maybe I will talk to my wife, hey, how about buying a new car, right? So these are all information which can be leveraged by this business or an organization to run their business better, or to look forward to, right? So I hope this slide made some sense, right? What is the different types of data which an organization will have, and how they will analyze this data, right? So now the next question is, like, what that we will have is, okay, our organizations has all this data, right? Now, how do who uses this data, right? So like I said in my previous example, right, if I am 8 years into my Toyota Qualis, or some car, right? Now, might be that is so the sales team or the marketing team might use that data, right? Okay, who are the people who has a car with us and still more than 8 years, right? Like 8 or 9 years. 8 years is an example, right? Some people tend to use it for 10 years or 15 years. But say, what, maybe the marketing team sees, that's a good time to send them a flyer and ask them, like, hey, do you want to consider buying a new car, or do you want to change the current car, right? So marketing team is one, right? So other team is the customer themselves, right? So when I bought a car from Toyota, right, I have a login created with Toyota of Ernakulam, and I can log in and see, okay, what things do you have, right? How is so this data can be used by the customers themselves, right? The sales team. So marketing team is different from sales team, right? So the marketing team send the flyers, they market, they advertise, right? But when a prospect or when anybody who is interested to buy a car, when they come to the showroom, it's the sales team who takes care of them, right? So the sales team will know all the history and everything, right? So likewise, when this data which is stored within the organization, when I call the customer service, right? So the customer services team will ask me like, hey, what's your name, first name, last name, and driver's license. They pull up my information. So all these teams, they all use these teams for taking care of the customer or for making better decisions or getting more business into them, right? Now, the next question is, we have all this data in this organization stored in one way or the other, right? But how do they access this data, right? What are the different mode of access, right? So definitely websites and portals. When I say portal, is like, Toyota of Ernakulam, right? There is a portal, or if there is a website, that is one way they can access this information. The IT teams within them, within the organization, they have a lot of reporting tools, right? I'm not sure if in your curriculum you will learn about any reporting tools, but definitely there are some reporting tools which will create a lot of reports, which will be used by the sales and marketing teams within your organization, right? Also, you can pull the data like a file, like a text file or an Excel, right? So the data which is stored within an organization, that can be retrieved with an application or with a portal, with reports, with multiple ways of accessing the data. So I hope we are moving at a decent pace, right? So now let's quickly talk about, like, how this data is stored in a data. Like we in the beginning of the session, we spoke about, like, how data could typically be stored in a computer, right? It could be in a file, or it could be in a folder, right? But when it comes to large enterprises, when it comes to very large enterprises like State Bank or some big organizations, how do these people store their data, right? So in a small world, we in this very small applications, everything is well fitted in your laptop, right? But that's not the case when it comes to big organizations, right? In big organization, we have some buildings in itself which will store data, right? What are they called? They are called the data centers, right? Now, data centers are being replaced by cloud, right? So I think that is something which you will learn as you go through your MCA curriculum, right? So, but essentially, even cloud, it's not something which sits in the sky, right? It's again a physical building somewhere, right? So, but it's nothing but a data center in itself, right? So, a big building is a data center, right? And then within this data centers, you have giant computers, or where we call them as servers, right? So there are big servers within this data centers, right? So within the server, you will create databases, okay? And the rest is RDBMS, right? Rest is the relational database management system, right? Within a server, you create a database, and the database can have multiple schemas. And within the schemas, you will have tables, and tables will have rows and columns, right? So in a very structured data format, or in a very structured world of data, we store the data in rows and columns within a table, right? So this is just an interpretation on how data is actually stored, right? So if I have a table by the name customer, and the customer has columns like first name and last name, definitely Thomas's information will be stored inside the customer table, right? And it will be one row, right? So essentially, what I want you guys to get familiarized with is the word data center. Data center is nothing but it's a big building where you have all these giant servers, right? When I say giant servers, server is nothing but a very big extension of your laptop, right? So it will be in some kind of a almara or a rack, right? Which are like servers. And then within the servers, we create databases. Okay, so that's where the data is actually residing in a inside an organization. So you will get familiarized with the words, database, schema, and everything, right? And for those people who have completed the BCA program, this is nothing new to you, right? So this is I just thought I will quickly talk about how data is stored in a database, right? Now we will quickly take a different turn from a data perspective, right? So data is some data is structured and some data is unstructured, right? So we all agree to this aspect, right? Not all data is created equal, right? Some people key in the data, right, in front of you. So like I said, when you try to check into a hotel, somebody is keying in your data, somebody is typing in, right? So maybe in a different place, you write everything in a piece of paper, you take a picture and you send it over, right? So some comes in different. So data gets entirely created in different ways, right? So like social media apps are definitely one way of capturing information. But again, like I said, like point of sale, that's what happens when point of sale is nothing but where an operator keys in your data, right? So data is created differently. And let's first try to understand what is the structured data and unstructured data, right? Again, within structured, before we go in deep about structured data and unstructured data, we have to understand what is qualitative data and quantitative data, right? So quantitative data goes more with structured and the qualitative goes with unstructured, okay? So let's try to understand what is quantitative data versus qualitative data. So the reason why we are talking about quantitative and qualitative is for you to understand what is structured and unstructured, right? So next slide will clearly talk about that, okay? Now here, let's take the example of a bookshelf, okay? So a bookshelf, how does it look like, right? It is made of wood. It was built in Italy, deep brown in color, golden knobs, right? It smells like oak, a smooth finish. So this is like we are talking about the quality of the shelf, like the look and feel, right? So that is all qualitative data, right? So all this qualitative data is like unstructured, right? Like it's not something which can be measured, right? How does it smell like? It smells like oak. So you cannot say, what, it smells 1 kg or 2, it's not measured, right? It's just the qualitative data. So that is more of an unstructured data, right? But if you look at the right side, right? How tall is it? 3 feet tall. How heavy is it? How many books? How many shelves? How many cabinets? And what's the price, right? These are all quantitative. We can measure, right? So these are all quantitative, right? So this is the quantity, right? So this quantitative data is predominantly, it can be structured data, right? And qualitative is something like, the look and feel information. So what is it? Why do we talk about this structured and unstructured data, right? So the structured data is typically, what we hear a lot about the big data, right? And the regular RDBMS, right? So the big data is associated with unstructured data, okay? Structured data is associated with any traditional database management system, like your Oracle database or your SQL database, DB2 database. These are all structured RDBMS softwares, okay? Now, so for a structured data, you can predefine a data model, right? Data model is nothing but, do you know how many tables to create, how many columns to create, etc., right? So this is purely all the structured data will go in, right? And all the structured data is predominantly stored in a data warehouse, okay? Unstructured data, like whatever you said, which is like images or all this unstructured kind of data types. It can contain audio, video, any email data, sensor data, right? So there is no specific data model to it, right? So this unstructured data is it's predominantly stored in data lakes, right? Or NoSQL databases. So NoSQL databases, so if I read it correctly, right, 80% of the data which a company holds is unstructured data, okay? And it is this unstructured data is where all the business insights are. Business, when I say business insights, that is where your artificial intelligence or machine learning comes into picture, right? So that's where companies are now focused on, right? How can I know my customer better, right? Uh, is somebody liking my product, right? Is somebody not liking my product? Make intelligent decisions. Know your customer. Talk to your customer if the customer is not happy, right? How can I keep my customer with me? If he wants to buy a second car, how do I make sure that he stays with me? So all those business insights and artificial intelligence, all those things happens within this data lake, NoSQL databases, right? Structured data is more like, what, predefined data model. You have an employee table, you have a customer table, you have a product table. So you have some specific information which is keyed in, right? So that is the key difference between structured and unstructured data, right? Now, I think we have another 10 minutes. So I will leave another 5 minutes for us to discuss. So quickly, I will talk about a few other topics which will be very, very useful for you guys. So at the end of the day, organizations do get data, and this data has to be transformed to knowledge, right? So data and knowledge, what's the difference between data and knowledge, right? Data means it's pure information, pure first name and last name, like elements, right? Pure elements. Knowledge is like, what? Okay, data. Thomas Jr. is a customer of Toyota, right? So and he bought a car in the year of 2000, right? So all that information is the idea of technology. People like us is to convert this data into knowledge, right? So data is transformed within an enterprise, right? So when you get the data is cleansed. It goes through a few processes, right? Like cleansed, standardized, and transformed are different processes which happens in a data warehouse. I'll tell you what those things are, right? So, and I also want you guys to understand a couple of things like OLTP database and OLAP database, right? There's a transactional database and there is an analytical database, right? So we will quickly talk about those two aspects. This OLTP and OLAP, right? So these are two types of databases that we have in an enterprise: online transaction processing database and online analytical processing database. Okay? So let's quickly try to understand like what are the different types of data systems, right? So some systems are designed for very quick transaction processing, right? So a typical example is IRCTC, right? Indian Railway. If you're trying to book a ticket, you key in the information, right? You type in your details, or even if you're going to a station, they quickly write in they will quickly type in your information. The idea is to give you the ticket as soon as possible and process the next, right? So it's fast paced. The data that is getting entered at that point in time, it might not be super accurate. Your house name or your home address might not be super accurate. You are just putting in that information so that they can have this information, right? So this online transaction processing systems, they the idea is to make the transaction happen very quickly or provision the ticket to somebody. If we are talking about example of IRCTC, the idea is to provision the ticket as soon as they can. Okay, so you feed in some information, they do not verify. You give a license number, they don't verify if it is correct or not, right? You just give the number. Likewise is the address or the phone number. You just key in that, right? For the sake of putting that information in, right? And they take this, they provision the ticket. So OLTP systems are designed for fast processing of transactions so that some functionality is immediately achieved. So here the functionality of IRCTC was to give ticket to somebody, right? Process and give a ticket. So that's one good thing. Now, OLAP, right? OLAP is nothing but online analytical processing systems, right? So data from this OLTP systems will move to OLAP systems. Okay. Now, if IRCTC wants to send a flyer or an advertisement to Thomas's home, so saying that, what, hey, you can get a free ticket from IRCTC. You will not get that for sure, but I am just giving you for the sake of an example. So what do? They go into the system and they see, hey, what is the address? This is the address, right? So the idea is you will get the list of all the addresses, and these addresses when OLAP, they will be much more accurate. Now I'll tell you why do I say that this information when it is entered in an online transaction processing system, it moves into an OLAP. During this journey of data from OLTP to OLAP, a lot of processes happens. Okay, so that this information when it reaches OLAP, it is fit for purpose. When I say fit for purpose, what that means is it is data is clean, that is good. Okay, that can be used. Now you have to uh, get accustomed to this word ETL. Okay, ETL is nothing but extract, transform, and load. Okay, so what happens is from these OLTP systems, right? They extract. Extract is like you select all this data. There is a transformation, right? So transformation is nothing but what you make the data better, and then you load this data into the OLAP systems. Okay, so OLTP and OLAP, right? There are the same data resides in these two places. In OLTP, the idea was just to make sure that some immediate function is achieved, some immediate functionality is achieved, like provisioning a ticket or something. But later, once that data is there in the OLTP systems, we extract, we massage it well, we transform it well, and then we load it into the OLAP systems. Okay. Now, this process of what is this extraction? Then this transformation, right? This transformation process is very, very critical. Okay, with transformation, that is where I was referring to the term, like what data is made fit for purpose, right? There could be a lot of data quality issues. Okay, so remember this term, data quality. Okay, the IRCTC agent who was provisioning this ticket to the customer, he might have keyed in this information, good, bad, we do not know. All it had is like the first name and last name is good, he gave the ticket, right? The other information, whatever is there, all the other data elements, whatever that he keyed in, it might not be good, right? So when we try to measure how good is that data, that process is called a data quality process. So now all these processes that whatever that I talk about, right? This data quality. So there is a team within every organization called the data governance team. So my fellow friends, what the responsibility of this data governance team is to make sure that the data which is coming in from this OLTP systems, right? They measure and gauge. Okay, they will look into this data. They will see if it is good. If it is not good, they will apply some processes. So what they do is like if you look at this data quality list of activities, right? They do some data profiling, data cleansing, data standardization, and data verification. 4 different things. Let's just quickly go through what these things are, right? So data profiling. Data profiling is nothing but what he will go into each of this. Say that there was like 100 tickets which were provisioned by IRCTC yesterday. It goes through and see like hey, does all the 100 customers, do we have the data for phone number for all these 100 people? Yes or no? Do we have information? Do we have addresses of all these 100 people? Yes or no? Right? So that is data profiling. So data profiling will tell me how complete the data is. Okay. Now that is the first step. Now, when I get the data, when I look into the data, okay, data, I am trying to look at the phone number column, for example. In the phone number column, I see some characters, right? That is not good. Those I consider as junk character within a phone column. Okay. So cleansing. So we will remove all this. There could be a lot of typos, typing errors. So we will clean them, right? So that is data cleansing. Now, next one is data standardization. Data standardization is like, we have 10-digit phone numbers. Okay. So the first 3-digit, maybe hyphen, next 3-digit, another hyphen, and last 4. Right. So that is the format in which I want my phone numbers to be in. But the IRCTC guy, when he keyed in, he did not do anything about it. He just simply hit all the 10 numbers together, 10 numbers together. There is no hyphen in between. So I can make sure my process does that. They standardize it. Now, last is data verification. A lot of people, they just key in the address. It might or might not be accurate, right? So I have to go and verify if these addresses are correct or not. So I think there are mechanisms in which you can verify the addresses too. So all these activities, right, before we load the data into our data warehouse or OLAP systems, the data governance team purely goes through all this process to make sure that the data, whatever that has come in from OLTP systems, it's fit for purpose. IRCTs is just an example, right? That's the simplest example that you can get. But if you go into the world of banking, it is much more severe and critical, right? So this data governance, we don't have time to talk in detail about all the aspects of how the data can be fit for purpose, but that's essentially what data governance is, right? Now, the last topic is, now you understood. I mean, I think I was able to give you some insight on why is data management very critical, right? And as MCA graduates, right, do not assume that it is not my thing. It is your thing. Okay. I also came out of my engineering background saying that, data, it's not something which I may have to focus on. But the key driver here is, what? The data is the asset, right? And all these activities, whatever I spoke about, like, what the ETL part of things, right? Or OLTP systems, OLAP systems, data governance. These are all functions where you will be involved. So after you get into a job with any of these companies, you might end up with one or the other part of these streams. Okay, so data is very critical for us and for companies, right? But from a company's perspective, data is their asset. Data helps to understand how their customer is doing. Customer satisfaction is a must for every organization to survive. Okay, so it helps teams to understand, it helps customers and businesses to understand more on data. And data insights definitely is the futuristic, it gives the futuristic outlook for any businesses. So I think that is pretty much what I wanted to cover. I'm so sorry if it was super fast, but I hope I was able to give you some insights on what data is, what are the types of data, how is data stored in a company, and how is data being handled, right? I think that's an hour. I mean, that's too much to cover, but I hope this session has motivated you all to learn more about technology and data, right? Um, Definitely, it's a very again, like I said, I congratulate each and every one of you for enrolling in the MCA program. Okay, you cannot go wrong. Okay, if you put your heart into what you're doing, if you put heart into your studies in here, I'm sure each of you is going to end up in this technology profession, in this technology profession, and you're going to do good. Okay, so thank you so much for listening into me. Maybe I can take a few questions. Once again, thank you so much, everybody. Hope I was audible. Maybe I was a little faster, but I think that's my style. But I hope you guys have gotten some insights into data.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for an informative talk, and it's very valuable for. Okay, thank you, sir. Now it's a time for the session open to the audience. You can ask questions or any doubts.
Hello,
I
Jibin
did not
sir.
hear any. I did not hear any yet, but I think I can hear you well. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
I think
There's a question.
I think I have a question. Okay. The question is from Ashwati Kailash. Ashwati, thanks for asking. The question is the data management system we are using now effective and secure enough for storing big data, right? So the data management, very good question, Ashwati, right? So this goes back to the topic that we were discussing, that is the traditional RDBMS, right? Is where we used to store data, right? So for storing big data, the traditional RDBMS is not the place, right? So for big data, so there are multiple NoSQL databases. So NoSQL databases will, again, there are different types of NoSQL databases based on the kind of data that you have. Okay, if it is graphical data, it is different. If it is document data, it is different. So for big data, there are different types of NoSQL databases where you will have to, which you will have to leverage. The traditional database management systems like an Oracle database or a SQL database, they can use structured data. So unstructured data is big data, which will require NoSQL databases. Hope I answered your question, Ashwari.
Dear students, you can unmute your mic and ask questions, or you can type in the chat box.
I hope you were able to understand at least, if not everything, at least a little bit of things what I have said. I hope. If I don't know how much.
Sir, there's a question.
Okay, that's a question. Okay. So this question is from Fatima Nasrin. Yes. So the question is, thanks for the question, Fatima. So the question is, nowadays data is more privacy valuable. So how can we ensure that our data is secure in a big organizational database? Okay. So this is data privacy is the topic which Fatima that you have touched on. Okay. So the key aspect of data privacy is access management. Okay. Who has access to the data that is stored, right? And who access management is the key critical thing. Let me put it that way, right? Even if it is for IT or if it is for business, right? Who has access, and then what are the tables to which he has access to, right? So we can make sure that what we provide access to those people only to which what they need, and we make sure that the access management is very, very key, right? So not everybody in the organization will have access to the database. So there are line managers who will make sure why each and every other person need access to the data. And secondly, if somebody needs access to the data, it will be on a table by table, or it will be like an object based access. So access management is one thing. And then the next thing is like, I think the restriction of access is the key philosophy with which every organization makes sure that the data privacy is secured. Hope that answers, Fatima.
Okay,
Yes.
sir. Basha sir, I think now we can wind up. I think there is no more questions.
I think there is no questions more. Then now I request Professor Akbasha K.E., Department of MCA, MES AIMAT, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Okay,
So
thank you.
please.
Thank you. Respected dignitaries, colleagues, and my dear students, very glad to be here for this is the third induction program of our 2020 batch MCA. For that, the specialty of this function is this is the first international webinar of our induction program. So for that, we have an eminent resource person, Mr. Thomas Jones Jr. He's from US, and he has long years experience in software development, and he started a career as data research administrator, and he has worked many US-based companies. Currently, he is working as the data warehouse manager in Athene in Lowa, USA. So here he had shared a section on what is data, how do we handle data. Actually, this topic has major relevance in this time. So in relevance in software development as well as research field, many research colleges are doing different data related projects in their research work. So that much importance in this topic. So our speaker had shared about the importance of this topic, and the program, the session was very interesting and awesome. Then also he shared some deep insights to this topic and revealed some interesting facts. Okay, so one thing I can sure that I'm sure this session will be helpful for your molding your career after complete your MCA. So I wish you all success. And in this occasion, and remind one thing about our resource person. When I discuss about this topic, this session, he had contacted me many times. Sir, this topic is good or not? This topic will be useful to our students, etc. That much committed and humble and a good scholar. So on behalf of MES AIMAT and Department of MCA, I heartily thank Mr. Thomas Jones Jr. for your great sharing and spend a lot of time with us. Thank you so much, sir. Next, I thank. Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes, yeah, yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, Akbar. Thanks for all
Thank,
those nice words.
next, I thank our Managing Committee Secretary, Advocate Abul Hassan sir. He's the well-wisher of our institution. He had shared. He has always supporting us. This program also had supported well. Thank you, sir. Next, I thank our director, who is giving permission to organize this program. Thank you, sir. Next, I thank our head of the department of MCA. Actually, she is the backbone of our department. Is always guiding and instructing us. Thank you, ma'am. Next, I thank head of the department of MBA, Saja sir, who always supporting us. This program also had attended session. So thank you, sir. Finally, not the least, I thank Jibin N. He is the man and behind this every scheduling of webinar sessions in our campus. Thank you, sir. Next, I thank Apna, not Aishwarya, anchor is done well, and all my dear students and colleagues. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now it's time to wind up. Data is very important in our life. The data can be stored in different ways. A data warehouse is a database designed to support decision making in an organization. Data warehouses are used for analytical purposes and business reporting. And data warehouses typically store historical data by integrating copies of transaction data from disparate sources. Data warehouses can also use real-time data feeds for reports that the most current integrated information. So we can conclude today's session. Tomorrow we have another informative talk. The details will be informed to you. Thank you for all attending. We hope have learned and enjoyed this presentation. Stay safe. Thank you. Okay,
Okay.
thank you, sir. Thank you, Thomas, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you.